And that's the thing. I'm going to apologize to the listeners out there, to the Cult of Cornette members, because I know that I have not been myself. Brian, you can concur with this, that I have a reputation for the longtime listeners, for the people who followed the show for ages and ages, of being a cheerful person, an upbeat, a positive person, never critical, never down, never grumpy, always sunshine, lollipops, rainbows, and waterfalls. Troubles and stress just run off my back like a duck's feathers in mobile oil, or whatever the fuck that saying is. I don't know. Somehow the duck has feathers that cause trouble to run away or something. But normally, I'm never grumpy and cranky and old and cantankerous and miserable. I feel like I've been that lately, but you can concur that is certainly not my reputation on a long-term basis.
Certainly not with people who aren't strangers, no.
So anyway, I've been trying to come up with something, and I've been working on a project to try to alleviate my stress with everybody's health issues and the family and all the stuff we've had going on this year. Not a lot of time to jump up and kick my heels and come on, shake your body, baby, do the conga, that type of thing. But I wanted to do something fun to alleviate my stress. So I ended up giving myself a whole different kind of stress. But over the last 6 months or so, it has been fun in spurts. And my announcement that I've been teasing for the past couple of weeks is, the new Cornette book's here. The new Cornette book's here. It's not as big as a phone book, but it's more interesting. Brian, I've been obviously telling you about this project and my aches and pains with it, or what I found, or what I'm doing. But for the folks out there, at the risk of boring you, Brian, so you can continue with the ice pack on your mouth, I was at the grocery store checkout line, trying not to stare at the people who didn't have their shit together that were delaying me in the course of my business. And I would stare at the racks of the collector's books they'd have, on Elvis, or on the world of Disney, or the Beatles, or classic horror films, whatever the case, where they got the nice, it's a variety of articles about the subject and the color pictures and the memorabilia reproduced. And I said, somebody ought to do that for wrestling. And then at the same time, for a while in the back of my head, is over a period of almost 10 years, from like 2012 to, I was close to 2020 or thereabouts. These years are starting to blur together. I wrote a monthly column for Fighting Spirit magazine, which was the dominant newsstand wrestling magazine in the United Kingdom at that point in time. It's since experienced its demise, but I understand I was not a contributory factor. But I had a lot of writing that had never been seen in the United States, and actually had not been seen anywhere in its entirety in print, because, I have a problem with being brief. You may have noticed that, Brian, that I have a problem with brevity. But anyway, so I always thought, well, I ought to put those columns together in some type of compilation. And then I thought, why don't I just do both? So that's what I've been working on. It's an 8.5 by 11, 100-page collector's book in color, except for the people who are sold, they're still in black and white, like you would find on the racks of the newsstand or whatever, or the grocery checkout line, but it's on wrestling instead of these off-brand things that most people like. And in trying to come up with how to put this together, I went through the columns that I'd written. And there were some pieces of writing that I was especially proud of. But it couldn't be all over the page, so I kind of culled it down to the best pieces that I'd written, either on wrestling stars that had passed during the time I was writing the column, or wrestling stars of the past that had passed but had great careers that impacted me. And then when I sat down with those, I rewrote almost everything because it's been years later. I forgot to say things the first time, and I can't leave anything alone. And I added a few new pieces based on what I was doing while I was getting there. But my theme came together. It was stars in the wrestling business that I was either a fan of when I was a fan, or had personal interaction with in the business, or both, that one became the other. Hence, the title of it is Heroes and Friends. Because this is 12 guys with, I think, unique and fascinating stories. You know, whether, even if they weren't wrestlers, some of these guys would have, if they were the world's best sign painter at one time, they still had fascinating stories, unique lives. And these pieces are kind of part biography, part historical perspective and information that some that we impart here on the show, part personal interactions and stories of my, whether I was 17 years old or 50 years old when I interacted with these people. And then we have taken, and Brian, again, you were involved here because you gave me access to the Wrestling News Archive, which is, well, we could do a phone book and not even scratch the surface, but a couple of things that I needed, because you have everything. You were able to have that, and a few other people I'll thank over the course of time as weeks go on. But there's about 100 pictures and illustrations from my collection, the Wrestling News Archive, in various places. Some of these not seen in decades, and some I would say never seen by the public. And I know that that's true because I took a few of these things that have not been released. This is also the first publication using some of my wrestling photography directly from the negatives, since, as we've talked about on the program here, that we're starting this project going through my original negatives and jumping Jehoshaphat, what you could get on a print from a negative in 1979 has changed significantly in 2025. Brian, I may have been as good as Francesco Scavullo and never realized it. I don't know what the fuck is going. If it didn't look like that then, I could have raised the prices back then that we were selling them at. But anyway, the 12 guys that this book features, and, you know, we're not going to go over everything in detail today, but we'll talk about this again as the weeks go on. Chapter 1 is Bobby Heenan. And I think that's kind of self-explanatory because we wouldn't be sitting here talking now, because I probably would have never been involved in wrestling if I hadn't seen Bobby Heenan. Bobby Heenan, The Sheik, Bruno Sammartino, Ray Stevens, The Dream Machine, Paul Bearer, Vader, Boo Bradley. And I know people are going to say, well, one of these things doesn't fit. I liked Boo. I had a personal interaction with Boo during the period of time he worked for me at Smoky Mountain. He had passed away while I was writing the column. And I did it based on how I had been introduced to him and my interaction with him. And Brian Elliott, who was the editor of Fighting Spirit at the time, said that it was one of the best pieces of writing in general that he'd ever published in a magazine. And it kind of encapsulated the way I felt about Boo and his experiences in the business. So he's involved. And Sputnik Monroe. Go ahead, you were going to say something.
Well, some fans, again, there are some younger fans and some fans who
I forgot
with Smoky Mountain.
Who would he be? Balls Mahoney, if you're one of the kids out there. But his first break in wrestling and television spot was in Smoky Mountain as Boo Bradley, Chris Candido's childhood friend, managed by the evil and vindictive Tammy Fitch, who would later on go on to have Sunny Days.
Did she ask you
And
to
then
change Sitch to Fitch, or did you do that?
no, I thought that's what it was. I thought that's what when she had it because they had the New Jersey accent. So I'd already written down Tammy Fitch. She said, "No, it's Sitch." I said, "Well, it's Fitch now." We've done the notes. So Bob Caudle can't fucking make these last minute changes. The fuck? Anyway, I told her that way. At that point, there was no internet. People won't be able to fucking look you up. Consider it a blessing.
Yeah, really.
But anyway, the other people involved, Sputnik Monroe, Lance Russell, Ron Wright, and finally, and my favorite chapter, Pat Malone, the Green Shadow. And we've been teasing people with talk about Pat Malone, but his story is here, all the stories that we've told together with facts and figures and pictures. And I think it's the best one of the bunch because it's the one that almost everybody that buys this book will learn something from, no matter what kind of a wrestling expert they think they are, because he's the unknown story that we're finally getting a chance to tell. But some of these pictures are cool. And again, the Lance Russell chapter, we've found enough of my negatives. The best pictures that I have seen of Lance and Dave, Lance and Lawler, Lance and Hulk Hogan on the Memphis wrestling set, coming off of these negatives 45 years later or whatever. And Hotchkiss Featherbottom has been a gem in all of this. Said, "Oh, here's what you do with this high resolution scanner," and then boom, and you put it through the thing. And I'm like, God damn. Again, I should have charged more money back then.
Do you have Lance at Jerry Jarrett's house party?
Lance was not there.
Oh, I thought Lance saw the house, and that was one of the things that triggered everything with him and Lawler.
No, Lawler heard about the house. Lawler wasn't there either. No, I remember I got pictures of Stan and Steve because they were about to debut as the Fabulous Ones, and that was Jarrett's pet gimmick. Dundee was there because he was obviously the booker. There may have been a couple of the other boys there, and I'm trying to think, but there wasn't a lot. And Lawler was definitely not there, and Lance didn't come.
Lawler was intentionally not invited, or Lawler didn't want to go?
I don't know. I wasn't the mailman carrying the invitations out. But no, Lawler wasn't there. Now, Lawler lived in Memphis at the time, and all these guys lived in Nashville right down the street. But no, Lawler heard plenty about the house. 18,000 square feet and the fucking ballroom and the gold fixtures and the 100 acres that it sat on the mountaintop of. And why am I down here on Walnut Creek Road? Yes. But anyway, but that's the thing is there's all kinds of high-end merchandise for modern wrestling. And you can get, the high resolution copies of Cody Rhodes's dental x-rays autographed and framed from Fanatics or whatever. And you and I have talked about this. There's not a lot of higher end, color collector's books on classic wrestling. I think I found out why when I saw what this thing was going to cost and the time it took to set it up, but there's not a lot in that space.
There's almost nothing in that space. It's always been one of my big things. And, I'll probably be doing some projects down the road too with things from the archive. But, if you look at music, for instance, there's a magazine I've always loved. I've been getting it since I was 19, Mojo Magazine from England. And it's high-end writing, and it's high-end photography, and it's a nice layout. Nothing looks cheap. Good slick paper. My thinking has always been, why can't that be done for wrestling? Especially if you have an audience, if you have the people who actually care about this kind of thing. You look at whatever's out there now, and it's just everything. It's covering modern wrestling, which is a different animal than covering classic wrestling, but just the look and the layout and everything, it's not what appeals to me. When I see
Well,
when I see
it,
PWI on a newsstand at Barnes and Noble, it just
oh,
the look of it doesn't appeal
yeah.
to me. The look alone.
And to clarify, we're not talking about the biographies we talk where Brian Solomon has just written about Gorilla Monsoon. We're talking more of the more visual, photo illustrated magazine, photo tabletop, coffee top, fucking Rocky Top, whatever kind of books that you because I wanted to be able to see if it's about the Beatles, they're showing there's their first 45 on the blah blah blah. So here, not only do you see in Bobby Heenan's chapter, he made a set of knucks at a Legends event we were at that he could knock me out with because he was managing the baby faces. And is the same way that I did it. Of course, he was doing it first, and somebody different taught me, but it was so cool. He took the white tape and around the cardboard and made the blah blah blah. And after he hit me with them and knocked me out, he fucking signed them for me. And I've got them. So there's a picture of that. We've talked about Ron Wright's chisel in the stories about Ron Wright and those crazy days in East Tennessee when they used to get juice that way. Well, there's a picture of the chisel that may never have been seen, at least in color, in public before. Shit like some stuff on Sputnik Monroe to not only back up the famous stories about him helping integrate the seating at the Ellis Auditorium and the ones everybody knows, and Sputnik and the Cowboy, but just some of his other lunatic adventures. So anyway, it's and there's more modern shit too that all the way up to what well, Vader was around even 25 years ago. So son of a gun. I've hit all eras. But besides the pictures and the memorabilia and the history and etc., I'm proud of these pieces of writing because, as I said, the main thing was what put them together to make a theme of the book to me was that they were heroes and friends. They had been both people I was a fan of and or personally interacted with or both. But also these stories are just insane when you set them down on paper. And hopefully I have. There's a lot of the wrestling journalists out there, Brian, and the people with supposed degrees in journalism, the creative folks. But I would invite everybody out there to compare mine with theirs. I may not be a Solomon or a Hornbaker, but I turn a fairly decent phrase. And don't be scared when we talk about how high end this son of a bitch is. It's $24.95, and that includes my autograph. Because I wasn't going to do that to people. It's still, within the realm of reasonability for the common folks out there and stocking stuffers. Actually, if anybody in your family wears a stocking that's the shape of would be appropriate to put this fucking magazine in without rolling it up like a ball, you probably need to send them to the doctor. But it's a good gift giver also. And did I mention that the holiday sale at Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com will start this year, Saturday, October 11th at noon Eastern. And that's when this book will go on sale. But we're working on getting banners up on the website so that everybody can see what it looks like and what's going on. Brian, how many can I put you down for?
At least one. Maybe two.
What now? Don't go crazy for the whole, the whole family. Maybe pass them out down the street, stick them in mailboxes.
Well, we'll see about that. But as a photographer and as the photographer for the photos you were talking about before, what's it like for you after all these years to see these photos that you know pretty well, you know your material from 40, 45 years ago,
Yeah.
at a higher resolution than you've ever seen it before.
It's amazing. That's what I'm because again, even if you had in those days, if you took a picture on a roll of film, had the film developed, and your first roll, your first set of prints made off of that roll, right? That's as clean as they were ever going to be. Because invariably, no matter how careful you were, at some point, if you reprinted negatives, oh, especially several times, they're going to be exposed to dust. There's going to be a scratch. There's going to be something, right? Well, many of my negatives are almost all are pretty pristine, but some of them have been printed several times in the past. And you could see at some points, you could see dust or you could see a little smidge or a scratch or whatever. And no, this not only is that gone, but also just the resolution, I guess what I'm trying to say when you because I look at the prints, I still have all these prints from the 70s. And then I've looked at the test prints that we've made based on the new images that can be scanned off these negatives and also seen what they look like when you put them in to set up the printing process. I'm like, holy Jesus Christ. This shit would have been worth Time magazine in the 70s. So I again, hopefully I'll live long enough for the estimate is now 70 to 80 or 90,000 frames I might have over here in negatives, but we're going to see what this shit looks like here one way or the other. But it's an amazing difference in just the quality of the print that you can make now, the detail that you can get in it versus what you were limited to. And remember in the 80s, Bill Apter was said, please send me black and white pictures for the magazine because color pictures didn't reproduce as well in his black and white magazine because of the printing limitations of the time. Now you can just send a goddamn picture that you can print and hang on your wall through an email and be downloaded and zapped at Walgreens, and it looks better than the shit we could do then. But on the negatives, the information is there. If it was in focus and the exposure was right, you got a world of information now that you can get out of that thing to where it's like you're looking through a fucking window rather than seeing a picture that's been reprinted off a negative.
What exciting.
Am I boring you or have you lost the ability to, is your face swollen up like Planet of the Apes yet?
I can't wait to actually get my hands on this and see it and read through it. There's some of these articles I've read previously, but it's been, 10 years?
Well, and actually I rewrote everything anyway, so a lot of them they don't bear a lot of resemblance. There's a couple I saved because Paul Bear's, it just was kind of almost, and there's one of these, and I'll quit talking about it. Every time I read this thing, and I've read it 50 times, it makes me start crying. It's the Lance Russell. Because I wanted to do something, write something that was deserving of not only what a great person Lance Russell was, but how important he was to the wrestling that people even watch today. And I think I make that case in this piece that not only was he a big deal in his market, but that he helped so many people that went on to influence the business in so many ways and did so many things that influence, et cetera. And also just to illustrate how much people loved this guy. And so that may be my favorite. I don't know. They're all my little babies. Anyway.
Was it as enjoyable as it was in the past when you would lay out a program or a magazine to do this?
Well, no, this is, I mean, the programs and the magazines were always like, oh, Jesus Christ, we've got to have this done in 2 days. We need to sell a couple thousand of these, make 50 here, right? Boo, here's a picture. Goddamn, stick this in. And even writing a magazine article, you're on a monthly deadline and a certain amount of space. So this was, and all the books that I've done are different because the Midnight Express scrapbook was one whole completely different thing, and then the Gardens book and the Rags, Paper, and Pens about the Memphis merchandising were the more historical fact book for the historical nerds on one specific subject, and Behind the Curtain was a graphic novel. And I think this is a completely different thing again, but it's fun because I get to use all of the pictures and the memorabilia and the things that are cool related to these people that, I mean, even the publicity pictures that were widely circulated at the time of some of these people are not really well seen today. It's not any big deal to me to pull out a picture of Pat Malone and Ginger the Bear from 1950 something and go, oh shit, I forgot nobody's seen this in 70 fucking years. So that's I think that's more fun because I get not only get to write, but we also get to put a lot of this stuff together.
Well, again, very cool. When is it going on sale?
Saturday, October 11th at noon Eastern at jimcornette.com, since you happened to ask.
All right. When will the website crash?
And no, we're uncrashable now. We're unsinkable. Remember, we got Hotchkiss Featherbottom, and I'm telling you, he's bulletproof.
The unsinkable Hotchkiss Featherbottom.
The unsinkable Hotchkiss Featherbottom. He fingered Molly Brown one time in high school.
Come on. That's disrespectful. So That's disrespectful too.
Well, to which one? That's what I'd like to know. See, now.
Well, we've sunk to a new low.
Yes. I'm taking a drink.
I could use one too. What do you got going on?
No, it's a Sprite Zero, for heaven. I just needed something to wet my whistle, as Mama Cornette would say.